Welcome back to Women's Wealth, The Middle Way, the show that answers your questions about work, money, and family. My name is Susan McGlory Michael, and I am the CEO and founder of Glen Eagle, a wealth management firm in New Jersey. Our guest today is Cathie Perolman, a reading specialist and creator of Hands-on Phonics, a phonics-based system that helps young children learn to read. After 3 decades in the classroom, Cathie saw that teachers needed high-quality, usable reading materials, so she created affordable, print-ready resources for early learners. And Cathie, I can't welcome you enough today, especially since I am a little biased that I have 2 grandchildren who are now using your program. So I thought it would be really helpful for you to share this with other women who are listening today.
Well, I'm so excited to be here, and I thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your podcast.
Cathie, I think we should start with sharing a little bit about your journey and how you go from a classroom teacher in many different places and areas to creating educational materials used now across the country.
My journey has a lot of tentacles. I started out as a public school teacher in kindergarten and first grade in Europe and in Pennsylvania and Department of Dependent Schools. And then when I moved home with my husband, a military officer, there were no public school jobs. And I wanted to still be in education. I did have children, but I did want to still be in education. And I started looking around at what opportunities there were. And there was an opening for a Montessori assistant in our local Montessori school. And I had always had interest in Montessori, and my aunt was actually a Montessori teacher. And so I applied for the job, and I got a job as a Montessori assistant. And it was only a half-day position, and it was a great way to get to know people in the community. And I fell in love with the method, and it really matched my philosophy of children, giving children a lot of space and guiding them with love and acceptance. And that's how I got into Montessori. Not because I really looked for Montessori, but because it fell into my lap. And I felt like there was maybe some divine intervention there. As we moved around as a military family, I found my way into more and more Montessori classrooms. And then at a certain point in my career, I became a Montessori teacher trainer. And I was doing work teaching other Montessori teachers. And as part of to be a Montessori teacher trainer, you teach teachers how to make materials to use in their classrooms. And that's really how I segued into making materials. Long before people were making things on the computer, we were buying workbooks and cutting out pictures and pasting them onto cardstock. And I was teaching people how to measure little squares and draw them with lines, with colored markers and all of that. And what I found was that teachers weren't really doing a very good job of making quality materials. While I could teach them how to do it and have a vision for what kinds of materials should be in people's classrooms, and I could sit there in teacher training and tell them what their materials should be like, then I would go and visit teachers in their internship year. They wouldn't have done what I told them to do. I was oftentimes disappointed, and their classrooms weren't very rich in language arts materials. So I thought a lot about what I could do to make it better for them. And then the computer came along. I became a little better on the computer, and I had a rich set of materials in my own classroom. And then I got to know younger teachers who did know how to make materials on the computer, and they taught me how. And I spent one whole summer just learning how to draw little boxes, colored boxes on the computer, and I really worked to make what I had done by hand and I was using in my classroom, and I had really worked and finessed and made exactly how I wanted. I made it on the computer the way I wanted it. And in those days, I was able to put it on a CD, and I made 2 CDs of materials, and I sold materials like that for a long time. The mantra of my business is make it easy to be a quality Montessori teacher. So I did that for a long time, and then eventually I hired someone to create a website for me, and computers no longer had CD drives. And then I learned how to make things downloadable. And that was a whole nother learning curve for me. And now all my materials are online and downloadable, and you don't have to buy a whole CD. You can just buy a small amount. And now there's a company called Teachers Pay Teachers where you can go and you can look at any of my materials, and you can buy a very small amount or you can buy the whole program, and it's much clearer. There's a couple of video courses if you're interested in that as well. And it helps because then people can buy what they want and what they need, and if they want the whole program, they can get that or a small piece of it.
It's so apparent that you saw teachers that were struggling and you found reading material for these teachers and early learners, and you decided that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create this. And how innovative on your part and how entrepreneurial. Your hands-on phonics system, though, it's been used in the Montessori classrooms for so many years. What do you think makes it work so well for these young children and readers and for their parents who are a little anxious sometimes to make sure that they are where they should be, the level of reading?
First of all, it's tried and true. It's used on every continent that has English-speaking children. What I wanted was every time I looked for a resource in my own teaching career, so I'd be working with a child and I would think, gee, I wish I had this. I created it and I tried it out. And over the years, especially with the color-coded sound games to learn your sounds, there have been probably 15 different things that I've had in my classroom over time, but only 7 or maybe 8 are really in the sales now, because those are the ones that children choose and children like. The other ones have been used and children have worked with them, but they're not the ones that are the favorites. So we don't really have them anymore. So I think the fact that they're tried and true, that children like them, and I think that I've used it and whittled it down to the most efficient way for children to learn. There's variety, there's enough practice, but enough varied practice for children to really learn how to read, how to sound out words, how to hear the component sounds in words so that they can spell efficiently, and then in the very beginning to learn the sounds of the letters, how to hear the beginning sounds, how to say the sounds accurately, and all those things. There's a lot of practice, and yet if you have a child who's what I call a leaping learner, who just doesn't need all that, you don't have to use all that. You as a classroom teacher can have 8 ways to practice things and only use 3 of them for some children. But for the child that needs all 8, it's all there, because we know that not all children are the same.
No, what a gift. And you can hear the experience and the knowledge. And I think that's the greatest gift you bring to developing these type of things. I know that your hands-on phonics system, that's been used in Montessori classrooms for so long, and you are such a gift to the young readers. What advice would you give teachers or parents who really want to help their early readers fall in love with reading? And I know personally you are gifted. You have an inner gift of the ability to do that. And so I really, really want at the end of a podcast to share that, to not only put teachers at ease, but parents and grandparents, because I don't think there's something you haven't seen already. And so if you could just share your personal heartfelt advice to these teachers or parents or grandparents who really want to help early readers fall in love with the gift and the beauty of reading?
So the first thing I would say is love reading yourself, share literature, read to your children, read good literature, read the classics, read them over and over again. And I think about my youngest granddaughter who says, again, with a book, and read that same book over and over again. Even if you've read it a lot of times, read it again. You cannot go wrong by reading aloud to children. And it's better to share stories and share literature than it is to be doing flashcards with children, because that's teachers' jobs to be doing flashcards with children. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, as your child is starting to be working in school, if you have a child who's struggling and the teacher is noticing that they're struggling, don't be afraid to get them help. Don't be afraid to get tutoring, and don't be afraid to admit that they need help and get the help and spend the money early on for that extra help right away to get them off on a good foot. Because they say that a child who's struggling in kindergarten, who doesn't get support, will struggle in second grade. And so you want to get the support early on. And usually it's not a parent who's going to be able to go in and do the support themselves. It's a specialist or a teacher who is a specialist who knows how to do it and can work with the child. Parents a lot of times can't do it because the children don't respond to them like they do to a teacher. So that's my suggestion. Now, sometimes parents can play games in the car. Let's think of words that start with S, and you're waiting at the stoplight and you can think of words that start with S. You can play games like that. But if you have a child who's really struggling, the help has to come from a professional. Both of our families, Susan, have been in a position where we have had children who have gotten tutoring, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely not. And I think one of the greatest gifts now at the second phase of the journey, when grandparenting, as you say, there's nothing greater than that cuddle time with a grandchild reading. And you're right, they say again and again. And
that's a book.
My home has, you would never know that all my children are grown. There's so many books on the bookshelves just waiting for when they arrive. And they love going and pulling different books off the bookshelf and saying, read this one, Nana, read this one. And to me, I think as grandparents, it's the greatest gift we can give them. But also for parents after a long day, that's treasured time. Besides the benefit of the reading to them, it's also the one-on-one love time. I cannot thank you enough for all that you do and share, and that you're still giving back. We will have all the information to your website so that if mothers or grandmothers or aunts, or it's also a great gift to give a child if you see them struggling, that you're able to come to you as a resource and to your website and get all the help that they need. So thank you so much, Cathie, for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to help. And on the website, there are some blogs with some suggestions, with some wisdom. It's called Teach. There are some blog articles there with questions people have asked me. And you can write in and ask things too, and people actually do that. And that's one of the things that I have time to do as a retired woman. That is one of the benefits that I can give back to the community now.
Thank you, Cathie. What a gift. And thank you all of our listeners who joined us today. I can't thank you enough for sharing. And I'm not sure I'm going to even go on that website because I would love, just out of curiosity. So if I reach out for the question, I'll look forward to your answer. So thank you very much.
It was so lovely to spend time with you today.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Women's Wealth, The Middle Way. Make sure to subscribe to us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast app. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday. See you in 2 weeks.